A calm suburban evening was shattered by the sharp edge of my father's words. Outside, the cicadas hummed softly, leaves rustled in the warm breeze, and the scent of cut grass filled the air. Inside the room, the clink of wine glasses and laughter froze, swallowed by a sudden heavy silence. "You're so selfish," he said, right in front of everyone, while glowing over my sister, Emily Saunders. "Can you feel that ache? The ache of being invisible, the sting of favoritism cutting deeper than any wound. When does being responsible become a burden? When does bravery mean breaking years of silence?" That night, something inside me finally snapped. After all those years of carrying the weight quietly, I found my voice. The quiet heart, the one no one really saw, dared to roar. And just like that, everything changed. I'm Claire Mitchell. For the longest time, I was the one who held it all together, the responsible one, the hard-working one, the one who always tried twice as hard but was still overlooked. I grew up in Maplewood, right outside Philadelphia, in a neighborhood where every lawn was perfect and community barbecues hid unspoken battles. At home, the prize for favorite child always went to my younger sister, Emily, the one with the loud laugh and magnetic charm. Dad made no secret of it. Emily Saunders' gifts? Outgoing, charismatic, the life of every gathering. Me? I stood behind him, quiet and unseen, stuck in the shadow Emily Saunders' light cast. Mom tried to keep the peace. After the worst moments, she'd pull me aside and whisper, "He loves you, Claire. He just shows it differently." But as the years went by, I came to realize what she really meant was, he barely showed it at all. The difference between us was impossible to ignore. I carried the weight of being responsible, but it never earned me a word of praise. That contrast was a slow-burning ache I carried every day. Then came that night at the country club. Surrounded by familiar faces, my father's words dripped like ice water, freezing the moment, and me. The unfairness of it all boiled over. After years of silence, I spoke up for myself. The look on his face in that sudden quiet was worth every uncomfortable second that followed. It was the moment my invisible scars finally met daylight. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like no matter what you do, your efforts go unnoticed. It's a quiet kind of pain. It seeps into your bones, into your mornings, your late nights. I want to tell you how I found my voice, how I fought my own family's shadow and claimed respect, something I never thought I deserved. Because sometimes standing up for yourself means breaking the silence, and that's the bravest thing you can do. Claire sat alone at the kitchen table. The dim light stretched long shadows across the worn wood. From the living room, her father's laughter echoed, loud. The most recent addition to our complicated family tableau was Brenda, my father's second wife, 15 years his junior, and, unsurprisingly firmly, in Team Emily Saunders. From the moment she joined the family, Brenda positioned herself as Emily Saunders' advocate and confidant, often suggesting that I lighten up or be more supportive of my struggling sister. Family helps. Family Brenda would say meaningfully during holiday gatherings, her eyes fixed on me whenever Emily Saunders mentioned her latest financial crisis. What none of them understood or chose to ignore was that I had been helping silently and consistently for years. But the truth about exactly how much I had been supporting my sister would not remain hidden forever. The arrangement that would eventually lead to our family's reckoning began 2 years ago when Emily Saunders called me sobbing at 11:30 at night. Her boyfriend of 8 months, Tyler, had broken up with her and asked her to move out of the apartment they shared. The rent was due in 3 days, and she had no savings to secure a new place. "I have nowhere to go, Audra," she cried. "Dad says, I cannot move back in with him and Brenda because they converted the spare room into a home gym. Can I crash with you just for a few weeks?" My one-bedroom apartment was barely big enough for me, let alone a second person with extensive belongings. More importantly, I valued my personal space and knew from childhood experiences that living with Emily Saunders meant chaos and emotional drama. I cannot take you in, but I can help you find a place I offered instead. How much can you afford for rent?" The answer, it turned out, was next to nothing. Emily Saunders had been contributing minimally to the rent, with Tyler spending most of her part-time barista earnings on clothes, dining out, and weekend trips with friends. Now she was facing the reality of Philadelphia's rental market with almost no income and zero savings. Against my better judgment and Derek's cautious advice, I agreed to help her secure a studio apartment in Wicker Park. The rent was $1,200 monthly reasonable for the area, but far beyond Emily Saunders' means. "I will cover the first 3 months," I told her firmly. "That gives you time to find a better-paying full-time job and get on your feet." Emily Saunders was effusively grateful, promising to update her resume immediately and search for higher-paying opportunities. I even connected her with contacts at several companies, leveraging professional relationships I had carefully built over years. 3 months came and went. Emily Saunders had taken a retail position at a boutique clothing store, but was still making barely enough to cover utilities and food, let alone rent. Each time I brought up the agreement, she had a new excuse. The job market was tough. The boutique did not give her enough hours. She needed expensive new clothes for interviews, or she had unexpected medical expenses. Just 1 more month became her mantra. I promise I will figure it out. 1 month turned into 6, then a year. Before I knew it, I had been paying Emily Saunders rent for 18 consecutive months, watching my own financial goals slip further away. The down payment I had been saving for a condo remained stagnant. The master's degree program I wanted to pursue stayed on hold. The European vacation Derek and I had been planning was indefinitely postponed. Meanwhile, Emily Saunders' Instagram told a different story than her financial hardship narrative. There were posts from weekend getaways to Michigan wineries, new designer clothes with tags still attached, and expensive restaurant meals with friends. Each time I questioned these expenditures, she had a ready explanation. Friends had treated her. She had found amazing sales. The trip was mostly paid for by someone else. The financial drain was significant, but the emotional toll was worse. Claire Mitchell's fingers trembled as she stared at the glowing screen. The phone clicked dead, and the silence that followed felt heavier than words. Outside, the suburban street whispered with the rustle of leaves and the faint scent of rain in the air, peaceful, ordinary. But inside Claire, a storm raged. The quiet strength she'd carried for years was buckling under the weight of her secret. For so long, she'd been invisible in her own family, overlooked, overshadowed by her sister Emily, who everyone seemed to adore. But tonight, could Claire finally break free from that shadow? Or would the silence swallow her whole, like it always had? Every month, sending that $1,200 rent felt like shouting into empty space. Nobody knew, not Mom, not Dad, not a single soul. Emily made Claire swear to secrecy. "I'm too embarrassed," Emily had said, but Claire wasn't fooled. Emily wasn't struggling. Not really. She had a free place to live, paid for by Claire's hard work, while living like she was making 3 times her actual income. Designer clothes, weekend trips, dinners out. All while Claire kept quiet, covering the bills and sacrificing her own dreams. Family gatherings were the worst. Dad and Brenda would gush over Emily's progress, praising her for trying despite the odds. Meanwhile, Claire's wins barely earned a nod before the conversation shifted back to Emily. "Are you coming on the Lake Geneva trip this summer?" Dad asked one Sunday. Claire hesitated. "I don't think I can get the time off," she said softly. What she didn't say was how paying Emily's rent left her no extra cash for anything, not even a weekend away. "You work too much, Claire," Dad sighed once. "There's more to life than a career. Look at Emily. She doesn't make much money but knows how to enjoy life." Claire wanted to shout, "She enjoys life because you're paying for it." But she swallowed the bitterness and changed the subject like she always did. The resentment piled up, thick and suffocating. When she couldn't chip in for Dad's 60th birthday gift, Brenda threw a pointed look her way. "I guess some people prioritize differently," she said, loud enough for Claire to hear. And when Claire missed a family dinner because of work, Dad texted, "You're too focused on your own life to think about family." The irony stung. Claire was drowning in family, yet they acted like she was underwater alone. But tonight felt different. The silence after the call pressed on her chest. How long could she keep carrying this alone? How much longer could she stay invisible? Claire closed her eyes, the rain scent drifting in through the window. Tomorrow? Maybe tomorrow she'd finally say what she'd held back for so long. Maybe tomorrow she'd stop fading into the background. Or maybe the family she fought to belong to would never see her at all. In the dim light of Claire's cluttered kitchen, the hum of the old fridge filled the room. The rain tapped softly against the window, carrying that familiar fresh scent of wet earth. Claire sat still, eyes fixed on a folded letter tucked beneath a pile of mail, a letter Emily had left behind. Derek's words. The night of the Wilson family dinner at Maplewood Country Club felt heavier than usual. The polished silverware clinked softly, glasses caught the light from the chandelier above, but the warmth didn't reach me. I slipped behind the heavy velvet curtains just out of sight. That's when I heard it. My dad's voice, low and serious, talking to a close family friend. What I caught next hit me like a cold snap on a summer night. There was a letter, folded tight, his hand shaking just enough to reveal the truth. His favoritism wasn't about love or expectation. It was his way to cover old regrets, his own fears that never faded. The laughter from the dinner room felt distant now, empty. For years I'd carried the weight of being the quiet one, the invisible one. But that moment shattered the fog. I saw the real story beneath all the smiles, the battles nobody talked about. This was more than just sibling rivalry. It was survival. 2 days before, Emily Saunders called again. "Audra, I hate to ask." Her voice was that same shaky blend of hope and desperation. "There's this pop-up boutique event. I need the vendor table paid up front. It could really launch my business." I swallowed the frustration I'd felt 1,000 times before. Her business ideas came and went like seasons. Stylist, wellness blogger, now this. But the money always came from me. My savings, my sanity. I agreed, because I always did. But inside, I knew the cycle was crushing me. Resentment gnawed like a silent leak in my heart. At the dinner, Dad held his usual court. Brenda's smile hardly touched her eyes. Emily Saunders charmed everyone with sparkling stories, while I sat quiet, answering the occasional question about work. Then, the glint in my dad's eye, that calculating look he always wore when he was about to remind us who owned what in this family. A line dropped, casual but sharp. "You work too much, Claire. There's more to life than a career." The words stung, because he meant me invisible again. But tonight, the air changed. The rain outside tapped on the window, its scent fresh and heavy. The letter, held tightly in my hand now, was proof. Proof that the family I fought for had secret cracks beneath the surface. I wasn't just invisible because I was quiet. I was invisible because they needed me to be. So I made a choice. No more fading. No more silent sacrifices. It was time to stand up, to claim my place, my voice, my worth. Because sometimes seeing the truth is the first step to changing everything. The low hum of the restaurant faded into the background as Claire's heart hammered in her chest. The warm overhead lights suddenly felt colder, shadows stretching longer across the table. She held the fork tight, knuckles white, as Emily Saunders casually dropped the bombshell. Miami. A trip with her friends. Just a quick girls' weekend. Nothing fancy. But Claire saw through the smile. The buzz in the air turned heavy, like the scent of rain hitting hot pavement outside, sharp and unforgiving. Emily Saunders' story wasn't just a getaway. It was the secret she kept from the rest of the family. The business opportunity she begged Claire to invest in, just a cover, money meant for a vacation months in the making, and a designer bag probably hidden under the guise of deserving it. The laughter around the table suddenly sounded hollow, like a soundtrack missing its meaning. Claire's breath hitched. The familiar ache of feeling invisible stung deeper. Would she let this slide again? Or was tonight the night she finally spoke up? Her father's voice broke the silence, casual but cutting. "You work too much, Claire. There's more to life than a career." His words weren't kind. They were a reminder, once again, that she was the family's invisible backbone, the one taken for granted. Claire glanced at Emily Saunders, who avoided her eyes, distracting herself with the menu. Brenda chimed in about some new yoga studio Emily Saunders loved, painting a picture of ease and privilege Claire didn't share. The contrast felt sharp in her chest, the unspoken division stretching between them. Every story Emily Saunders told was another slash of difference. The carefree, spontaneous sister against the quiet, responsible one. The sister who never got credit. The sister who always gave but was never seen. Claire swallowed the pain, the disappointment tightening its grip. She had lived too long under everyone's radar. Her silence was no longer protection. It was a cage. The rain tapped harder now, the scent thick with promise and reckoning. Could she break free? Could she claim her voice, finally? Tonight she would have to decide, stand up and be seen, or disappear like she always did. Her fork trembled in her hand. The moment stretched, thick, heavy, with everything unspoken, waiting. Would Claire break the silence, or fold into the shadow one more time? I was the workaholic, the serious one, the one everyone thought missed out on life, but no one at that table knew the truth. Emily's easy mornings, her weekend getaways, they all came from my sacrifices. My paycheck paid her rent, her yoga classes, even that designer bag she hid behind, deserving it. My own dreams, on hold, buried beneath years of giving everything so she could chase hers. The laughter around the table felt sharp, like the chill before a storm. My father's approving nods to Emily cut deeper than any words. Every glance my way was a reminder, invisible, unseen, unappreciated. Then Emily dropped the bomb. Pottery class this summer. "It's a bit expensive," she said, twirling her hair like she always did before asking for more. My heart pounded. How many more passions was I expected to fund? After the rent, the business opportunity turned Miami trip, 2 years of supporting her dreams. "Claire, what about you?" Mrs. Porter asked gently. Before I could answer, my father cut in sharp. "Claire doesn't have time for hobbies. Too busy climbing the corporate ladder." I swallowed hard. I had to cancel grad courses this summer. Budget constraints. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Then the camera caught it, my hand trembling as I reached into my purse. A letter lay there, unopened, addressed to Emily. A scholarship rejection. The warm glow around the table faded. The laughter died down. Suddenly, my silence wasn't weakness. It was my armor. I wasn't just invisible. I was protecting her, holding us both together in a quiet, hard-fought battle no one saw. So, who really needed to be seen? Who was really fighting for respect? Tonight, I was done standing in the shadows. The rain tapped softly against the window, the scent of wet leaves drifting in. Claire Mitchell sat at the dinner table, her fork trembling in her hand. The room buzzed with awkward silence, the air thick with tension and unspoken truths. Her family's eyes flicked between her and Emily Saunders, the golden child, the one everyone seemed to favor. Claire's heart pounded. How many years had she carried the weight of their expectations? Quietly, invisibly. Emily's laughter, so light and carefree, grated against Claire's nerves. She saw the designer bag she bragged about, the weekend getaways funded by Claire's paycheck. Tonight, it all came crashing down. The table felt like a courtroom. Mr. Porter shifted uneasily, and her father's glare was sharp and unforgiving. Then her phone buzzed quietly on the table. Claire hesitated. With a deep breath, she pressed play on a voicemail from Emily. Her sister's voice cracked, confessing a hidden illness she'd been battling alone. The revelation stunned the room. Emily's struggles explained her dependence, her distance, her choices. The anger faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Claire's quiet strength held the room in a fragile pause. Who was really fighting? Who deserved to be seen? Claire stood, voice steady. "I'm done paying your rent, Emily. You've got 30 days to find your own way." Her father's face darkened. "You can't just cut her off," he snapped. "Where's she supposed to go?" he demanded. "Maybe she moves in with you and Brenda," Claire said, eyes steady. "Or finds roommates. Works full-time. But I'm done sacrificing my future." "Why make this public?" her father barked. "Is this revenge?" "No, Dad," Claire said quietly. "This is me finally standing up for myself. For years, I've been called selfish for wanting a life beyond sacrifice. Now you see why I don't take vacations, why I don't chase hobbies." She grabbed her purse, ready to leave. "Just drop this bomb and walk away?" her father sneered. "People say you're difficult. You make scenes instead of handling things like your sister." Claire paused, taking in the shocked faces around the table. Brenda's forced smile, Emily's tear-filled eyes already calculating her next move, her father still trying to cast her as the villain. "I'm handling this exactly as maturely as it needs to be handled," Claire said, calm but firm. "Enjoy your dessert. I'll see myself out." The rain outside grew louder, matching the storm finally breaking inside Claire's heart. For the first time, she was seen. The sound of my heels on the hardwood floor echoed through the dining room as I walked away, leaving behind the weight of expectations and obligation I had carried for too long. For the first time in years, despite the confrontation and its inevitable fallout, I felt something close to freedom. The drive home from the country club was surreal. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. But inside, I felt a strange mixture of terror and liberation. Years of carefully maintained family dynamics had just been blown apart at an upscale dining table, and there was no going back. I barely made it through my apartment door before my phone exploded with notifications. 3 missed calls from my father, 5 from Emily Saunders, and a text from my mother asking what happened. Word traveled fast in our family circle. I silenced my phone and poured myself a glass of wine, hands still shaking slightly. Then I called the one person I knew would understand. "I did it," I told Derek when he answered. "I told everyone the truth about Emily Saunders' rent." "How did it go?" he asked cautiously. "About as well as a nuclear explosion. Can I come over? I do not want to be alone right now." 30 minutes later, I was sitting on Derek's couch, recounting every excruciating detail of the dinner confrontation. He listened without interruption, occasionally squeezing my hand in support. "I am proud of you," he said when I finished. "It took incredible courage to stand up for yourself like that." "It does not feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like I just destroyed my family." "You did not destroy anything. You just stopped pretending the existing situation was okay." My phone buzzed again, and I glanced down to see a text from my father. "Your behavior tonight was inexcusable. You embarrassed this family in front of my friends. We need to talk tomorrow when you have calmed down and can be reasonable." I showed Derek the message and he shook his head, still making it about him. "I see. That is his specialty." I sighed. I turned off my phone completely and spent the night at Derek's apartment, grateful for the buffer of physical distance from the storm I had created. Morning came too quickly, and with it the reality that I would have to face the consequences of my truth-telling. When I finally turned my phone back on around noon the next day, the barrage was immediate. 14 missed calls, 23 text messages, and several voicemails demanding my attention. Emily Saunders' texts ranged from angry, "How could you humiliate me like that?" to desperate, "Please call me. We need to figure this out," to manipulative, I guess you never really cared about me at all." My mother, who had not been at the dinner but had clearly received multiple versions of what happened, sent a typically conflicted message. "I understand you have been helping your sister more than anyone knew, but publicly embarrassing her. And your father was not the answer. Can we talk about finding a solution that works for everyone?" The most surprising message came from Brenda, my father's wife. "I had no idea you were supporting Emily Saunders financially. While the dinner table was not the place for this conversation, I respect that you have been carrying a burden alone. Your father is very upset, but I think everyone needs to acknowledge your side of this situation." It was the first time Brenda had ever shown any understanding of my perspective, and despite everything, I felt a small glimmer of hope that at least one person in the family might be capable of seeing beyond the established narrative. I called my mother first, figuring she would be the most neutral party. The conversation was difficult, but not hostile. She admitted she had suspected Emily Saunders was receiving help from someone but had assumed it was our father. "You should have told me," she said. "I could have helped mediate this situation before it exploded." "Would you have?" I asked honestly. Claire Mitchell stared out the office window, the faint scent of rain mixing with the early autumn chill. Outside, leaves rustled softly, a quiet contrast to the storm brewing inside her head. For years, she had been the invisible one, always responsible, always the steady rock the family leaned on, yet never the one anyone really saw. Family dinners were battlegrounds of favoritism. Her sister Emily always got the spotlight, the sympathy, the easy pass. But today was different. Her phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls, texts from Emily swinging wildly between guilt trips and desperation. Claire ignored them all, focusing instead on holding her ground. When security called about Emily making a scene in the lobby, Claire didn't flinch. "Tell her to leave. I'll call after work," she said. That night, the call came. Emily's voice was raw, shaky. "I'm falling apart. I don't know what to do." Claire's voice stayed calm, firm. Boundaries had to be drawn. "You've got 30 days. Find a new place. Make this work." Then, just as Claire felt she was finally reclaiming her strength, ready to silence the past, the office doors burst open. Emily stood there, not desperate, but holding a letter from their mother. The quiet room filled with heavy tension as Claire's eyes scanned the words, confessions of years of favoritism, sacrifices hidden beneath the surface, truths she never imagined. Everything Claire believed about her family, about herself, shifted. What if the silence she'd carried wasn't invisibility, but a misunderstood strength? What if she wasn't the overlooked daughter but the keeper of secrets too heavy to bear alone? Her quiet endurance cracked open, revealing not isolation, but startling clarity. I had maintained my boundary about financial support, though I had helped her move and bought her a housewarming gift. Small, normal acts of sisterly support rather than taking on her adult responsibilities. My relationship with my father remained strained, but was slowly evolving. After several weeks of minimal contact, he had called with what passed for an apology in his world. "I may have misunderstood some aspects of your financial relationship with your sister," he said stiffly. "While I still think the way you handled it was inappropriate, I recognize that you were under pressure that I was not aware of." Coming from my father, this was the equivalent of a profound mea culpa. I accepted it as the olive branch it was intended to be. "I appreciate that, Dad. I could have handled it differently, too." We began rebuilding our relationship with cautious small talk about neutral topics, carefully avoiding the landmines of family dynamics and financial expectations. It was progress, if imperfect. The most surprising development came from my mother. After years of peacekeeping and conflict avoidance, she had apparently been doing some soul-searching of her own. "I enabled a lot of the favoritism when you girls were growing up," she told me during a lunch we shared near her office. "I thought I was protecting you by teaching you to be independent. But really, I was just avoiding the hard conversations with your father about how he treated you differently." "Why now?" I asked. "Why are you acknowledging this after all these years?" "Because I saw what it led to," she said simply. "You carrying this enormous financial burden alone while still being labeled as the selfish one. It made me realize how much damage our family patterns have done. These conversations with my family members were healing, but also exhausting. I found myself turning inward, focusing on rebuilding the parts of my life that had been neglected during my years of supporting Emily Saunders. With the $1,400 now remaining in my monthly budget, I enrolled in the graduate program. I had been postponing. The evening classes in advanced marketing strategy and digital analytics were challenging and invigorating, connecting me with like-minded professionals and opening new possibilities for my career trajectory. I also began working with a financial advisor to create a realistic plan for buying my own condo within the next year. After years of watching my savings stagnate, it was empowering to see the numbers moving in the right direction each month. My relationship with Derek deepened as well. Without the constant stress of my family obligations and financial strain, I had more emotional energy to invest in our partnership. We took the weekend trip we had been postponing for months, a simple getaway to a lakeside cabin in Wisconsin, where we hiked, cooked together, and reconnected. "You seem lighter," he observed as we sat by the fire one evening. "Even when you smile, it reaches your eyes now." "I feel lighter," I admitted. I did not realize how much energy it took to maintain that situation until I was free of it. The real test of our family's new dynamic came 2 months after the confrontation when my father suggested resuming the tradition of a family dinner. The invitation specifically mentioned a fresh start and moving forward together, indicating at least some recognition that the past patterns needed changing. I agreed with trepidation, suggesting we meet at a neutral restaurant rather than the country club with its loaded memories. To my surprise, my father accepted this modification without argument, a small but significant sign of his willingness to adapt. The dinner itself was awkward but not disastrous. My father, Brenda, Emily Saunders, my mother, Derek, and I sat around a table at an Italian restaurant downtown, carefully navigating conversation like people on a first date rather than a family with decades of history. Claire Mitchell sat quietly at the restaurant table, the hum of conversation swirling around her like a distant storm. Emily Saunders was glowing, sharing stories about her new apartment and how she'd finally earned more responsibility at work. "My manager's training me on the inventory system," Emily Saunders said, eyes shining. "If things go well, I might even get assistant manager this fall." Their mother's warm smile invited more praise. "You seem really dialed in," she said. Emily Saunders nodded, then glanced at Claire almost as if to pitch a secret. "Turns out I actually like having structure and responsibility. Who knew?" Claire felt the familiar ache of invisibility, the usual background noise of her life. But then something shifted. Her father, quieter than usual, listened. When the check arrived, he insisted on paying, his typical gesture of control wrapped in generosity. But then he said something no one expected. "Claire," he said, his voice steady but different, "I want to hear more about this grad program you started. Sounds like the move that's been shaping your career." The room seemed to slow. Claire's heart caught. This rare acknowledgement, so small yet so huge, broke through years of silence. She spoke about her classes, the goals she'd kept whispered to herself, and for the first time, her father listened. Really listened. After dinner, the night air smelled faintly of rain and leaf rustles. They stepped out to the sidewalk. He pulled her slightly aside. "I've been thinking," he said, awkward but real. "I know I haven't always treated you and Emily Saunders the same. She's more like me in some ways, and maybe that made it easier to get her. But that doesn't mean I don't value what you've done. Not at all." It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase all the years Claire had felt unseen, the weight she had carried silently. But it was something. A crack had finally opened in the wall between them, and just maybe, things could change. Would Claire finally be seen for who she was? Not just the quiet one, the responsible one, but the woman who had fought to stand tall. The question hung there, as real as the ticking clock inside the restaurant, as intimate as the clinking cutlery fading into a new kind of silence. Claire stepped into Emily's modest apartment, the warm scent of simmering pasta wrapping around her like a soft embrace. The faint hum of city life drifted through the cracked window, mingling with the quiet clatter of dishes. For a moment, Claire's guarded heart softened. This wasn't the competitive, polished sister she'd imagined. This was someone quietly fighting her own battles. Then Emily's phone buzzed sharply, breaking the calm. Claire glanced over to see a message from their father. The words were laced with bitter resentment, a reminder of the family's tangled dynamics. But then, something clicked. Claire realized the favoritism she'd felt wasn't just about being invisible. Emily was carrying her own silent weight, hidden behind smiles and modest success. The revelation hit hard. Could it be that both sisters were struggling under the same storm? Suddenly, Claire's frustration turned into something else. Compassion. What if the real battle wasn't against each other, but against the unspoken wounds their family never healed? "Thank you for saying that," Claire said softly, the words feeling heavier than expected. "It means a lot." Walking to the car after dinner, Derek squeezed her hand. "Baby steps," he said. Claire nodded. Baby steps. The weeks that followed brought small but real changes. Emily called, not for money, but advice on dealing with a tough customer. Their father sent an article about marketing trends, adding, "Thought you might find this interesting for your grad work." Their mother started inviting Claire to lunch, asking about her dreams instead of family drama. 3 months later, Emily invited Claire to dinner in her new place. The apartment was cozy, full of personality rather than polish. Over a simple pasta meal on the balcony, Emily confessed, "I wanted you to see I'm really doing okay. I know you worried I'd fall apart." Claire admitted, "I did worry." Emily smiled sadly. "When you paid for everything, there was this voice saying I was a failure. Now, I know I can handle life, even if it's not fancy." This moment shifted everything. Their sisterly bond was no longer about dependence, but respect. 6 months later, Emily earned a promotion and moved to a better neighborhood, still with roommates but on her own terms. Claire watched, realizing that sometimes being seen means seeing the struggles beneath the surface. And maybe, just maybe, healing starts there. Claire Mitchell had always been the quiet backbone of her family, the one who gave without asking, who carried the weight no one saw. She'd been the responsible one, the go-to for anything from bills to emotional support. But inside, resentment simmered, a silent storm beneath the calm. When her father's birthday dinner invitation arrived, Claire felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just about a party. It was about the years of feeling invisible, sidelined by family favoritism that had left her weary. That night, as rain whispered against the windows and leaves rustled underfoot, Claire's phone buzzed with a forgotten voicemail. Her sister Emily's voice trembled with a confession, a raw, unexpected admission of envy and pain that had fueled the family divide. Suddenly, the warm glow of the country club felt colder, shadows stretching longer across the polished floors. This wasn't just Claire's battle anymore. It was a shared wound, a hidden truth now spoken aloud. Could the rivalry, the silence, the invisible chains finally break? Claire's quiet resilience was no longer just about standing strong alone. It was about seeing the cracks, both hers and Emily's, and choosing to heal. Months earlier, Emily had asked for small loans, always paying them back. Claire's graduate courses were going well, with a professor even hinting at a future in teaching. She and Derek talked seriously about their future, marriage, shared dreams, and building a life together. But the biggest change was inside Claire herself. The heavy cloak of resentment was lifting. She was no longer the family ATM, or the selfish sister. She was simply Claire, someone with boundaries, dreams, and the power to say yes or no on her own terms. When her father invited the family to the country club again, Claire accepted without dread. She'd learned that the $1,400 she sent monthly to Emily's landlord wasn't just money. It was a symbol of sacrifice, of trying to hold a broken family together at her own expense. But healing doesn't happen overnight. It came in quiet moments, through Derek's steady support, a therapist's gentle guidance, and Claire's own hard-won self-respect. With financial freedom came emotional freedom. Claire found the courage to say no without guilt, to voice her needs without apology. And in that space, something new began. Not just surviving family drama, but reclaiming her own life. In a quiet, dimly lit living room, Claire Mitchell finally breaks the silence. Her voice is steady but carries the weight of years spent feeling unseen. The soft hum of the clock fills the space, marking each heartbeat of the moment. Outside, rain taps gently against the window, mixing with the faint rustle of leaves in the cool night air. Claire's words hang heavy. Truths about favoritism, invisible sacrifices, and the quiet battles she fought alone. A single tear slides down her cheek. It's not just sadness. It's the relief of being heard. The room falls into a deep, almost sacred silence. Old wounds linger but begin to soften. Respect starts to take root where doubt once lived. Could this be the moment the family's long-held patterns finally shift? Claire looks ahead with cautious hope. She knows this won't be easy. It's about more than just speaking up. It's about building something new. Her graduate degree is opening doors she once thought closed. The savings she's carefully set aside promise a future where she controls her own story. Housing, retirement, freedom. The skills she's gained in honest communication reach far beyond family dinners. They're tools for life. Saying your truth can make a room go silent. But in that quiet, there's space for something real to grow. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is break old cycles, even if it feels like breaking a family tradition. Have you ever had to set boundaries with people who just didn't get it? How did you find your voice when you felt invisible? Moments like this remind us all. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's the start of respect, both for others and yourself. Claire's story is still unfolding, but one thing is clear. The hardest truths can lead to the deepest healing, and sometimes silence is just the beginning.